Hello everyone, and welcome back to Ben Plays Games. The video game market is an extremely competitive one, and with so much money often invested into projects, most of the time taking risks simply isn't good for business. But today, I'm not covering one of those particularly pricey projects, but rather, I want to talk about Life is Strange and the risk developers tNod took creating it, as I believe it's one they should be greatly applauded for. If you enjoy the video, please think about subscribing, and now, let's take a photography class at the Blackwell Academy. Developing a video game is an expensive undertaking. For larger AAA projects, budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars are not unheard of, and development costs of somewhere between $50 and $100 million are nowadays considered to be fairly normal. And with so much money on the line, should a title prove to be a failure, it pays not to take huge risks. Shooters, sports, and action, for example, are genres that see more big budget releases, because developers and publishers know they are the ones that ultimately prove most successful in terms of sales. You can hardly blame them either. Companies investing that much money into a game could end up in significant financial difficulty should a big budget release not hit its sales targets. Life is Strange wasn't what you'd call a big budget release, but equally, like the larger projects I've just discussed, which can shape a studio's future for better or for worse, it absolutely was the make or break title for developer tNod. The studio's previous release, Remember Me, had performed poorly, and with rumours of impending bankruptcy being reported in the media, tNod's future looked bleak. However, against all odds, the team secured further funding, teamed up with industry powerhouse Square Enix, and began development of Life is Strange. And with so much on the line, especially since Life is Strange was actually the studio's second choice title after their pitch for a larger game was turned down, you'd think tNod would possibly look to play it as safe as possible, perhaps adapting Life is Strange to ensure it conformed more closely to industry norms in terms of setting, characters and plot, which, fingers crossed, would hopefully lead to increased sales. Mimicking games that had already proven to be a hit would be the best bet for recouping development costs, and, if things went really well, for kickstarting a whole new era for the studio. But tNod went in another direction entirely. They decided to create a game in a similar mould to Telltale's 2012 choose-your-own-adventure smash hit The Walking Dead, but set in a high school. It was a huge risk. While the adventure game format had been revitalised by Telltale with its more choice and consequence-driven approach, The Walking Dead still had a degree of action, and, of course, zombies, to capture the attention of more mainstream gamers. There was no indication whatsoever that a game centred around an 18-year-old girl going through school and dealing with the associated drama that so often goes hand in hand with that period of one's life would resonate in any way with gamers. But resonate it did, and in such a way, I don't think anyone could have predicted quite the level of success Life is Strange would go on to achieve. And while what I've just discussed gives you some idea of the context around what a risk it was for tNod to release Life is Strange, I think you need to take a closer look at the game in detail to understand just how much of a gamble it actually was. Life is Strange follows aforementioned 18-year-old photography student Max Caulfield through 5 episodes, during which she deals with the trials and tribulations of life at school, the mystery disappearance of fellow student Rachel Amber, her renewed relationship with friend Chloe Price, and the impending destruction of town Arcadia Bay due to a catastrophic storm. And it works incredibly well. While you could be forgiven for having some misgivings around the writing, which can be a mixed bag every now and then, it's a game with an amazing amount of heart. The way Max and Chloe's relationship develops is grounded and believable, and the mysteries surrounding both the storm and Rachel Amber's disappearance are gripping, with both made all the more compelling thanks to a strong cast of supporting characters. On top of that, the game doesn't shy away from dealing with tough topics such as addiction, suicide and bullying, all of which is backed up by a fitting soundtrack, graphics that perfectly match the game's tone, and a well-defined setting. But perhaps the most important factor is Max's ability to rewind time. Being a teenager is an awkward period of anyone's life, and at one point or another, you're going to get yourself into a situation where you're so embarrassed you wish the ground would just swallow you up, or you'll wish that you could go back and do things differently so that you never end up red-faced in the first place. Well, Life is Strange evokes those feelings all over again, except this time, you can actually do something about it. The idea of wanting a do-over is relatable at any time of life, but looking at it through the lens of an awkward teenager makes it all the more believable, and the ability itself also acts as an excellent twist on the already established format. If Life is Strange is considered to have a hook, rewinding time is definitely it. At this point, you might be asking why I've bothered to give you an overview of what the game's about. Well, I wanted to go over it because although all of the above sounds brilliant in principle, The game as a whole was simply not something gamers had expressed a desire for, or that had proven to sell successfully. In an industry where protagonists are more often male than female, making Life is Strange's protagonist not only a female, but an 18-year-old female, was incredibly risky. There weren't many games that depicted high school life in the way Life is Strange did either, as that wasn't proven to sell. And to top it all off, few games wanted to go anywhere near the difficult topics I mentioned earlier either. Life is Strange was a huge risk because when you take these things into consideration, it should by all rights have flopped. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that if I was part of the management team at tNod, I would have advised making huge changes to the game to make it more marketable to a mainstream audience. But tNod believed in their vision, stuck to their guns, and executed wonderfully, no doubt while under intense pressure from the incredible risk they were taking on. When all was said and done, Life is Strange sold millions of copies and tNod won a host of awards. And considering the gamble they took developing the game in the first place, I can honestly say no one deserves their success more. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.